Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 16 of Outlaw Star. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Jean had to contend with the first of 7 assassins sent after him by space pirates, and initially I suppose Jean didn't exactly put up a good showing. You know, there was all sorts of lying and subterfuge going on, but when it came down to actually fighting the assassin, it was really only due to the intervention of the other crew that Jean survived and he overcame the assassin, supposedly, killing him and burying him and all that. The assassin isn't actually dead, he just sort of faked his death, but I suppose this was, in a way, sort of him getting out of the assassination business, which, there probably aren't too many opportunities to do so safely, so you take what you can get. Now, unfortunately for Jean, none of this stuff has gone any way towards helping him with his massive crushing debt relating to the Outlaw Star, so I reckon this episode he's probably going to find a job of some sort. So once again, we're just sort of starting off with not much going on, although given that this injured gentleman here, with clear prosthetic limbs and bits, is approaching the Outlaw Star with meaningful intent, I can only imagine he's either 1, an assassin, or 2, a client of some variety. Someone who recognizes the inherent value of the Outlaw Star. Oh boy. It's bad when Eijitan Clan is forced to be a waiter. Although, she seems to be a rather suboptimal choice of employee for this sort of a thing, because, she was already considering just eating one of the lobsters whole, which, on the one hand, I can't say I recommend that, but, oh dear. So they do have a customer, they have a paying customer who offered, this scrumptious meal, but they didn't see fit to bring Aisha along. Huh. Well, I guess that leaves us in no doubt about her relationship to the rest of the crew. Although it is notable Suzuka isn't around either. Alright, that's a good boss. Just absolutely brutally putting Aisha down for thinking she could eat something while on the job. Frankly, that's how life should be. I guess I was right, this guy is the client. Now, I'd imagine by his getup, he's got to be a pirate or something, right? Although, saying that he's looking for treasure, that kind of leans into it, you know? Ooh, okay. So he makes the job sound easy enough. You know, a salvage operation. There's treasure on a ship. The ship is down on a planet somewhere. Yeah, you know, it seems easy on the surface, but given that the title of the episode is Demon of the Water Planet, I get the feeling that the demon in question is probably guarding the treasure, you know? In fact, the Demon of the Water Planet might be a kraken or a leviathan of some sort, or some other dangerous beastie of the deep that doesn't take too kindly to people wandering around in its territory. Now, nevertheless, the client's being rather cagey about all this, and, you know, fair enough. If he's trying to obfuscate the fact that there's something really dangerous going on, you know, I can't say I blame the guy, really. Now, that said, despite the potential danger and how fishy everything is, there's a big price tag attached to all of this. And yeah, I mean, like, Jim's making the salient point here. You know, we are broke. We need money. So we're just gonna have to, like, try and do this whether we like it or not. You know, I do think it was interesting that Gene and Jim and their little conversation there was, you know, perfectly audible to the rest of the table despite trying to be discreet about everything. Well, at least the elderly pirate here is sort of understanding of the situation. It's like, look, you know, I don't blame you guys for not trusting me, but, like, you know, it is what it is. And fair enough, I suppose. He does raise the point that, like, it does take someone rather audacious to go after this treasure because there is something else going on here, and therefore, you know, the type of person that would be up for this kind of job is also the type of person who'd probably be a little bit suspicious, so everything just kind of lines up and works out. Now, it seems to me that these gentlemen who just kicked in the doors to the restaurant with a bunch of automatic weapons, you know, they seem to be after the old man. That indicates to me that the treasure must be really, really valuable. Now, the captain, I assume he's a captain, did at some point mention that, like, look, I know you guys got a grappler ship and all that, so it seems to me that a grappler ship is, if not required, then certainly useful for whatever this salvage operation is. Oh dear. So, it seems as though Gene and company took the opportunity to get out of Dodge while Aisha Clan decided to just, you know, go berserk and destroy everything. I reckon her boss isn't going to take too kindly to that, because not only did she tear off her uniform, but she's presumably destroying the restaurant too. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if she were just sort of, like, kept as, like, an indentured dishwasher until she pays off the damages she caused. It would kind of be right in line with everything, you know? Oh boy, we're already seeing the consequences now. Man, you know, the best thing she can hope for is being fired when you get down to it, seeing as how she comprehensively destroyed the restaurant. I mean, it would be one thing if it was just, like, internal property damage, but she collapsed the structure. That's something, man. Alright, so I guess, Suzuka and Aisha will not be accompanying the rest of the crew to wherever this treasure lies. It's kind of interesting. Oh. Never mind, here's Aisha. And Aisha's trying to dump the bill on him for some reason. Now, I was going to say, I feel like Aisha and Suzuka's particular skill sets aren't likely to be helpful if they're, sailing through a water planet, seeing as how, you can't exactly go out of the ship necessarily. But with Aisha now on board and having brought all those bills with her, something tells me that even if the Outlaw Star and its crew are successful in finding the treasure, which they very well might do, any profit they get is probably going to be eaten up by that gargantuan stack of bills. Oh dear. So the captain has just sort of let it slip that, he's finally back, which implies to me that something went wrong however long ago. He says it's been 30 years, so I suppose at this point it's fairly reasonable to assume he had treasure at some point and lost it here 30 years ago. Oh, so that's interesting. The planet isn't water entirely per se, but the atmosphere itself is sort of like a liquid, just because of extreme pressure. Now, I'm not sure if that explanation actually works, just because for something to be under such immense pressure that it becomes a liquid, I think that's a fair bit. I wouldn't expect a ship to be capable of withstanding something like that, just because I know, as a layman regarding submarines and stuff like that, there gets to be a whole lot of pressure once you start going, a certain distance below the surface, and I don't know if a spaceship would necessarily be rated for stuff like that, because, the problems a spaceship would encounter are different from the problems a submarine would encounter, a submarine, generally speaking, has to be more resistant to changes in pressure, whereas a spaceship, especially one that's going from planet to space and back to planets, that would have to be more thermally resistant to deal with exiting and re-entering atmospheres. So it almost seems to me like it would be a waste to fit out one vessel for both purposes, Oh dear. So the captain's now informing them, hey, there's some stuff I didn't tell you, you're about to find out, and also, my prosthetic limb is rigged to blow up, so, don't try shooting me here. Fortunately, Gene is sensible enough not to call his bluff, because, that's a real quick way to die. You're right in the blast radius, and, more to the point, you'd also destroy your ship on, the off chance that you don't kill yourself in the blast. Oh, wow. So, the captain here lost some dragonite, which the opening monologue informs us is, the most rare and valuable mineral in existence. And 15 tons of it, Gilliam informs us, is equivalent to 5 years of the budget of Frontier Worlds. So multiple planets budget for multiple years. That's not nothing. In fact, that's a fair bit of money. Oh dear. So, not only was the big sea monster they saw, not unique, they operate in packs, and that these creatures can tear apart ships. So, the Outlaw Star has its work cut out for it, it being a grappler ship, it might be able to fend off these creatures, maybe one or maybe a few, but if there's, packs of these things swimming around, it seems to me that things are gonna get rather hectic. And just thinking about it, I feel like the Outlaw Star might have a couple issues working in water as well. Just because, again, it was designed to work in space, where there is less friction, less, atmosphere. No atmosphere, virtually. The trouble is, water is much, much denser than vacuum. So, just thinking about it pragmatically, whatever motors and things you have actuating the grappler arms of the Outlaw Star, they're going to have to put in a lot of extra work just to move around normally. And, it might be to the point where, it burns out components. There's actually this similar sort of principle that applies to, wind turbines, right? Because, wind turbines, they've got, these big blades that spin around in the wind and generate electricity. But you can also use wind turbines in, rivers and things like that to generate power from, currents and things like that. The issue with stuff like that is you have to modify the shape of the fan blades. Generally speaking, they have to be a lot shorter. Because if you were to take, a big windmill blade and put it in the water, it would snap off. The current would break it. So, this is a similar sort of thing, I imagine. Or a similar sort of thing would apply. Something that's designed to work in space wouldn't work in water and vice versa. Even if you do account for all the pressure and temperature gradients and things like that, then, I don't know. It does seem kind of like a fool's errand to me. Now, if nothing else, it seems as though there was a fair bit of planning involved on how to deal with these creatures on the captain's part. His little, his idea here is sort of paying off and buying them time. Oh dear, so this is actually rather dangerous. They have to, board the sunken ship to get the treasure themselves. And I don't know, that strikes me as especially dangerous, because, sure, you can board their ship, but, in all likelihood, it's flooded. There's no atmosphere in there, so, you do have to have these spacesuits, essentially, but, as with everything, space is different from being underwater. A suit that'll keep you going in the void of space might not work underwater. And more to the point, it seems like in the 30 years since everything went down here, a lot of stuff isn't working, which I feel like could be expected, really, if you're gonna board a sunken vessel, the general assumption should be that nothing's working. Now, that was rather rude of the captain to just sort of shove Aisha aside after she opened the door. But I guess, he is understandably mesmerized by all the Dragonite. Now that said, he mentioned there was 15 tons of the stuff. And being supremely valuable as it is, 15 tons is a lot. But if you have to load it up by hand, that seems like a very dangerous and labor-intensive prospect, Because it seemed like they do have to move a fair distance. Okay, well, I guess we're just sort of sidestepping that issue. Jim calls up and says, "Hey, Gene, we're running low on time." Gene says, "Don't worry, we've got the last of it here." I can go along with that, but I don't necessarily believe it. Now, unfortunately, the little demons have come back, and they're causing trouble. So the question is, what are we doing here? I feel like maybe they should just abandon the rest of what they've got here. Oh, never mind. Okay. All right. So every time I think of a problem, they just kind of ignore it. Because I would think that, this is, a clear case of, ignore the treasure, let's fight back and get out of here and escape with our lives and what we've already loaded. But, no, I guess they have loaded it all, and now it's just a matter of, getting out of the ship. Alright, so unfortunately, this big beastie here is grabbing onto the Outlaw Star and preventing it from getting away. So I guess this one's the real demon of the water planet, seeing as how it's so much bigger than all the other ones. Yeah, so here we go. This is the real big beastie that caused all the trouble here. You know, the white whale, as it were. So, I feel like if it so dwarfs the Outlaw Star and it can sort of like fight back against the grappler arms, the only thing they can really do is to try and get away, but given that it's latched onto them, you know, things aren't looking good. Because, like, again, with, you know, the hull being designed for space, if the thing's grabbing them and they're trying to wrench away, I feel like that's a really good way to breach the hull, you know? Oh, of course. Alright, so kind of as expected, the captain is sort of absconding with all the Dragonite. Oh no! Never mind, I guess I was wrong, I suppose. Perhaps he's trying to take down the thing with him. I guess that's unexpectedly noble from my view. You know, I guess my expectation would be that he's like, okay, yeah, we got the treasure, I'm getting out of here. But I guess his grudge with the creature is such that, you know, he's willing to sacrifice himself if it means doing some harm to this critter. Now, it is unfortunate that despite Gene's pleading, the guy's just dead set on doing this. I mean, it makes sense in a way, but, I guess it's, kind of a pity. You know, at least Gene and the crew get, all the Dragonite, you know. That's gotta be worth something. Although it'll probably be eaten up by repairs and bills and things like that. It's also worth noting that, the old man wasn't bluffing about that bomb in his prosthetic. Oh dear. So, I guess, Jim isn't exactly stiffing Aisha here. You know, it turns out they didn't get as much profit as they hoped. And, you know, all the bills mounted together to, basically just wipe out anything they got. I suppose it is nice that they ended up with merely 0 instead of being dragged further into the negative, you know? I mean, small mercies, I guess. It is also very nice that Aisha is forced to wash dishes. It is kind of deserved for her little outburst earlier. Wow. Alright, so that's 2 episodes in a row where Gene buries someone. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.